Welcome to Check This Out,
podcast for kids and their grown-ups, where we explore people, places, ponderings, and past moments from history that shape the world around us. My name is Amy Contreras.
And I'm Cece.
Today we are continuing our series on
Women Who Changed the World.
In today's episode, you're going to learn all about who is Malala Yousafzai and why she's a woman who changed the world.
Let's get started.
I love the energy, Cece. Malala is cool to talk about because she's still alive today and young. She's only 27 years old. So when you learn her story and how much she's already accomplished, well, we know this is just the beginning.
Ooh, good to know.
Malala is the youngest person ever to win a Nobel Peace Prize. She won for her struggle to ensure the right of all children to education. If you learn nothing else today, know that she bravely stood up for education against incredible odds.
Oh, that's important.
It is. And before we get into her story, I'll share a quote with you that I love by Malala. She has said, "I tell my story not because it is unique, but because it is the story of many girls."
What does that mean?
I'll explain as I tell you her story, but first,
listeners, keep your ears open.
Because at the end of the episode, I'll recap 3 facts about Malala that you can check out more about at the end of the episode. See if you can guess which facts we'll highlight at the end.
I'm excited.
Me too. Malala was born in 1997 in Mingora, Pakistan. Mingora is a city in the Swat Valley of Pakistan. She's the oldest of 3 kids in her family. Malala's father was a teacher, and he was a big supporter of education. He even helped run a girls' school in their village. In Pakistan, some people didn't and still don't believe that girls should get access to education.
Why, Mama?
Around the world, people have different reasons for not wanting women to get educated, so it's hard to give a simple answer to that very complicated question. But most often, people want to stop other people from being able to be educated and read because when people aren't educated, they're dependent on those around them. For example, if girls can't read or learn for themselves, it limits their opportunities and what they're able to do on their own.
But I love learning.
I'm glad you love learning, Cece. So did Malala. Malala loved going to school, and she believed, and still does, that every child has the right to learn, especially girls, because girls aren't always provided with the same opportunities as boys in Pakistan. Her dad, being a teacher and an advocate of girls' education, really helped her love of learning. When Malala was little, there are stories of her being as small as 2.5 years old and going into her dad's classroom to hang out with the 10-year-olds.
She sounds really smart.
She is. When she was young, Malala was a star student, and she especially loved reading. In 2008, when Malala was just 10 years old, everything changed when the Taliban took control of her town in the Swat Valley.
Check this out.
Do you know what the Taliban is?
No.
Here's a helpful overview from Encyclopedia Britannica for kids. The Taliban is a religious and political group that came to power in the mid-1990s. The Taliban is known for enforcing strict Islamic law and for its support of terrorism. Most world governments do not recognize the Taliban as a ruling regime. Outside countries largely disapprove of the Taliban's interpretation of Islamic law. These laws do not allow girls and women to go to school or work, and the punishments for the crimes are very severe.
That must have been hard.
When the Taliban took over Malala's hometown, the Taliban extremists banned many things that Malala and her family and community had previously been able to do. Things like owning a television, playing music, even dancing were no longer allowed under the extreme Taliban rule. The Taliban also enforced harsh, often violent punishments for those who didn't listen to their orders. One of the big changes the Taliban made when they took power was that they said girls could no longer go to school.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, the Taliban actually burned or destroyed over 400 schools in Pakistan by the end of 2008. Although the changes from the Taliban extremists were scary, Malala was passionate about learning, and she decided to find a way to stand up to the Taliban. In 2009, she started writing an anonymous or secret blog for the BBC, which is the British broadcasting channel, and it didn't reveal her identity for fear of being discovered by the Taliban. In her blog, she described her life under the new Taliban rule. Between 2009 and 2012, Malala, with the help of her dad, spoke out against the Taliban in Pakistan and questioned their motives to keep education from women and girls.
She sounds really brave.
You have no idea, Cece. Just wait until I tell you what happened in October of 2012.
Tell us!
But first, it's important to know that Malala and her dad were making their voices heard across Pakistan and the world in their fight for free, accessible education for girls and women. She even spoke on TV. When Malala was 11 years old, the same age as some of our listeners, she gave a speech called "How Dare the Taliban Take Away My Basic Right to Education?" That was in September of 2008.
Wow!
Yeah, Malala's identity was revealed from her blog, and she used her growing platform to advocate with her father for girls' education. In 2011, Malala was nominated for the International Children's Peace Prize because of her activism and her outspoken stance against the Taliban and fighting for girls' education.
Did Malala win?
You know, she didn't win that prize, but in 2011, she was awarded Pakistan's National Youth Peace Prize.
That's a big deal!
It is. And those were just the first of many awards she'd eventually go on to win. But these awards and this recognition also made her and her family a target. And it was discovered that the Taliban had issued a death threat against Malala and her father.
Uh-oh.
In 2012, Malala's world changed. She did rise to international awareness, but it was because something really hard happened. On October 9th of 2012, Malala was shot in the head by the Taliban on her bus ride home from school.
What?
Remember, you all know that Malala is alive today. She's healthy and thriving because I told you at the beginning, she's 27 and still advocating for education.
I remember hearing about that.
Good. I don't want you to be stressed. Malala survived the gunshot.
I can't believe that happened.
Malala was on a bus home from school with her friends when two masked members of the Taliban stopped the bus. They boarded the bus and asked, "Who is Malala?" Her friends didn't mean to, but they looked at her and it gave away who she was. The Taliban shot her in the shoulder and in the head.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, she was in bad shape. She had to get airlifted to a Pakistani military hospital, and a few days later, she was moved to an intensive care unit in England. She woke up 10 days after the shooting. She had to go through many surgeries to recover from the attack.
Things were not easy.
No, she had a long and hard recovery process and had to go through surgeries and fight really hard to recover. The Taliban tried to silence her by shooting her. But when she survived the shooting, her voice became an even louder advocate for education. When she was 17 years old, Malala became the youngest person ever to win the Nobel Peace Prize. She won this award in 2014.
What an amazing story!
Yeah, the Nobel Peace Prize is one of the greatest honors and awards in the world. Other people we've talked about on the podcast have received it, like Martin Luther King Jr. and Mingora Matai. 9 months after she was shot by the Taliban and underwent lots of surgeries to recover, she gave a speech at the United Nations on July 12, 2013. It was her 16th birthday. It was her first time speaking in public since the attack. She spoke to the United Nations, or the UN, about education and women's rights. And the UN declared July 12th Malala Day.
That is cool.
In 2013, Malala published her autobiography called I Am Malala, the girl who stood up for education and was shot by the Taliban. Malala and her father also launched a nonprofit called the Malala Fund, which supports girls' education.
I want to check out more about that.
You should. If you want to learn more about Malala and her fight for education equality, some fun ways to learn are you can watch the documentary about her that's available for streaming. You can also read the Time magazine articles about her, or you can go to the library and check out any number of books written by or about Malala. The Malala Fund, which is her nonprofit, has been able to open girls' schools around the world. As of today, the fund has invested more than $47 million into girls' education around the world.
That's a big job.
It is. And at the beginning of the episode, I read a quote from Malala about how it isn't just her story, but it's a story for girls all over the world. Pakistan isn't the only place where girls have struggled to gain access to education, so Malala's doing this work all around the world. Malala ended up going to college at Oxford University in England, and she officially graduated in 2021. She did technically finish her degree in 2020, but her graduation was postponed due to COVID.
That makes sense.
Malala continues today to advocate for girls' education, and she's built a wonderful life. She got married, she produced a documentary that was nominated for an Oscar, she continues writing books and raising awareness for education for girls around the world. Her story is only just beginning.
I learned something new today.
Now, we promised we'd recap 3 facts about Malala at the end for people to remember. But I think this time we can do our fact recap as a little quiz. What do you think, Cece?
That sounds nice.
Okay, here we go.
Question number 1.
At what age did Malala Yousafzai win the Nobel Peace Prize? Was it A, when she was 15, B, when she was 17, or C, when she was 18? If you guessed B, you're right. Malala won the 2014 Nobel Peace Prize when she was 17 years old, making her the youngest ever recipient of the award.
Question number 2.
In which country was Malala born? Was it A, Afghanistan, B, India, or C, Pakistan? If you said C, that was a great answer. Malala was born in Pakistan in 1997.
Question number 3.
What major event happened to Malala on October 9th, 2012? Was it A, she gave a speech at the United Nations, B, she was shot by the Taliban, or C, she published her autobiography? If you said B, that's right. October 9th, 2012 is the day she was shot by the Taliban on her bus home from school, but survived.
Question number 4.
What's the name of the nonprofit organization Malala co-founded with her dad to support girls' education? Is it A, Girl Up, B, Global Education Fund, C, the Malala Fund? If you said C, the Malala Fund, you're correct.
Question number 5.
What was significant about the day Malala gave her speech at the United Nations? A, it was Malala's 16th birthday. B, it was International Education Day. Or C, it was Women's History Day. If you guessed A, that was a great guess. When Malala spoke to the United Nations just 9 months after she was shot, she spoke to them on July 12th, her 16th birthday. Great work, everyone. Now, before we wrap up, we have one more thing.
We wrote you a poem.
She was only 11 when brave Malala took a stand. For girls' education, her voice was her brand. Though danger loomed near, she didn't shy away from the fight. With courage and strength, she called on those who might stand up for girls against ones who tried to keep them small. Malala believed in education for all. Though shot by the Taliban, her spirit still soared. A Nobel at 17, her efforts adored. With the Malala Fund, she brings schools and pens. Education is worth fighting for, to the end. We hope you enjoyed this episode on Women Who Changed the World, Malala Yousafzai. Check this out, we know it can be hard to know if information you find online is accurate. We use verified sources to build the stories you hear about on our podcast. Our sources for this week's episode are NobelPeacePrize.org, Malala.org, the National Women's History Museum, Biography.com, and Time Magazine.
See you next episode. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for listening.